in 1982, when Microsoft, the super successful company, was 7 years old, they decided to make an international division, and Bill Gates asked one of his colleagues, Scott Oakey, to plan for that. So Scott Oakey came back and said, now I made a business plan. And then famously, apparently, Bill Gates asked him, what's a business plan? When I heard that, I thought it was so funny because obviously it was such a fantastic company and Bill Gates was a fantastic entrepreneur. So the funny thing is, how could he not know what a business plan was? And how could they succeed without it? It turns out that you can easily succeed in a startup without a business plan. And to back this up, I want to read up a quote from a study done by 5 professors from Babson College, which is a kind of university in USA that focuses on entrepreneurship. So they studied the success of startups that made formal business plans and some that didn't. And here's what they concluded. There is no difference between the performance of a new business launched with or without written business plans. No difference, no difference. The findings suggest that unless a would-be entrepreneur needs to raise substantial startup capital from institutional investors or business angels, there is no compelling reason to write a detailed business plan before opening a new business. So the exception was that you have to raise a lot of money. Let's say you have to build a big factory, or it's a very, very big project you have, from some formally oriented investors. Then they will require a business plan. If you want to build a factory that costs $500 million, then for sure they will want a formal business plan. So let's look at what the alternative is. The alternative is to make a business model canvas, or what many people call a business canvas, which is a much simpler thing. So let's look at what that is. What is in it? One thing that could be important is the value proposition. What is it that you want to do? Somebody might have another word for it. Instead of value proposition, they might say, what is the problem you solve? You have all these scooter services now in cities. What is the problem they solve? Of course, they solve the problem of that cars are too bulky. Cars need parking space, they make noise and so on. But then you can go on and say, which market segments do we want to address? And the market segments can evolve over time, but you have to start somewhere. What are the profit models? In many businesses, this is really tricky. For instance, you want to make a website. The website becomes incredibly popular, but how do you make money on this? We see other companies where this is what they are really clear about, but the other things need a lot of work. Customer relationships. What is our interaction with the different clients or customers? How do we get our stuff out, our media, our services, our physical devices or whatever we are selling? How do we get that out? What are the necessary activities? They could be, what are the resource requirements? There are a few startups that require like almost no resources. I love them, by the way. These are the kinds I really want to invest in, because you put in just a little bit of money and you can get a lot of value out. Now here we had the market segments. There's another one here. Who are the partners in this? This is really important, I think. It's there's an old expression in business which is called the value chain. And about 10, 15 years ago, more and more people, they started to talk about the ecosystem instead. So the ecosystem is, of course, suppliers. It's everybody who supplies something you need, and it's the distributors, it's end users, and so on. So this is a very important discussion. And then there's, what is the product? What is the price? This is so obvious, but there's so many different price structures you can have. And many startups, I see, they experiment a lot with the prices. So they try one price model, it doesn't work. They try another, it doesn't work. Try one, it's fantastic, and then they modify that a little bit. And each time they just write it down in bullets and then they change it. And I can go on and on, the cost structure, so on. There's one that I actually like. Here we have the critical success factors. One I actually like very much is, what is it we don't know? So sometimes in a business, there's something really important you don't know. You don't know what color they want. You don't know if there's a market for this in that country. You don't know if people want this product or that product. You don't know if they want it as a one-off purchase or as a service, etc. But in any case, now I'm using sticky notes just on a piece of cardboard. You can do it like that. You can put it on a wall. You can have a whiteboard where you write this stuff up. One thing I recommend though is that you take a photo every time you're about to change it. You just with a phone, you just take a photo of how it looks, and then you make a change. And keep doing that, because my experience is that sometimes you skip something because you don't think it works, and you evolve, and then you're kind of you get into a blind alley, and then you think that one of the things we skipped was actually okay, but the other things were not okay. So it's quite good to have a memory of this, also because when you have a memory of everything you've gone through, it reminds you how fluid it is. People have a tendency to forget the thought process and the information loop they have been going through to get to where they are. That is why many founders, they say, oh, I got the idea like this, because they think they got the idea like this, but they didn't get their idea in an instant. No, they were circling around it for a long time. And so just to go back through all the different iterations you have had will remind you that this is not something that's firm. We need to be agile. We need to have a flexible mind. We need to be driven by data. So in summary, what I would say about this is, if you had proposed to use this kind of planning 20 years ago, people would have said it's not serious. Now it's almost as if you come with a firm business plan written out in Word, 20, 30 pages, unless this is what you are going to do is extremely capital intensive, people will say, you don't seem to understand what it's like to run a startup, because startups are far more flexible than assumed when they make a firm business plan. This is better.
Do you speak future?